Welcome to Live with Crabtree Coaching Collaborative, your compass for educational excellence. Now, as instructional leaders, we want to avoid that overwhelming sense of burnout and exhaustion because of all of those different competing priorities. We want to avoid our staff members becoming utterly frustrated because they cannot keep up with the demands. And let's face it, we want to avoid just having that lack of confidence because we don't feel like we're making any progress. That's why you're here, right? My name is Alyssa Crabtree, and with over 16 years of experience, I am here to help you gain clarity, amplify your learning like never before, and hone in on intentionality. This is where transformation begins, and excellence is always the standard. Remember, we are in this together, my friends, so let's do this thing. Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is the first show of the 2024 season, and I am so excited to have with me today Anika Jones. Anika, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm so excited. Happy New Year, everyone.
Now, Anika, I have to ask you, okay, so I'm not a New Year's resolutions type gal, but are you? Do you have a New Year's resolution?
So I'm going to say my quick answer is no, but I did some vision planning in December.
Yeah.
I'm that person that I'm like, on December 2nd, I'm like, all right, let's go ahead and start reviewing things. So it's not just one particular area. I have about 8 areas that I talk about my desires and actions and put some motion to it.
I'm with you, Anika. I gave up on resolutions a long time ago, but I am a huge planner. And I did, so this is my last year in my 30s. And so I'll turn 40 in October. And so I have made like this year my year of energy. I was like, if anything, I was just like, I just want to go into my 40s having more energy than ever, getting on everybody's nerves with all my energy. So that's been mine. But I'm so glad that you're here with us. And audience, for those of you that are new with us tonight, Anika S. Jones is the lead consultant at Holistic Fluency. And I'm so excited that she's going to talk to us tonight about something that is extremely important inside our classrooms, inside our campuses, within our districts, and in the community, and that is collaboration. So Anika, can you just give us, our audience, a little bit more about you and your journey here?
Okay, I sure will. I was a part of the Great Resignation, right, a couple years ago, I'll say. But it was really important to me to make sure that we were having like these types of conversations. Honestly, I was having them, on my campus with educators that I supported and with the young people. But it was really important. I felt that I was led to go ahead and have these conversations on a larger scale and do this work where more people had access to these types of resources. So Holistic Fluency, we lean into emotional intelligence. We do really well and have had success supporting new and rising leaders, educators, parents, and adolescents. I know a lot of times people are like, what? Adolescents? Like, yeah, but those tweens, teens, and young adults, like those are my people. Gen Z, Alpha generation. Honestly, I'm very intrigued, and that is where I did most of my, when I was in the classroom. I was a middle school educator for, you said 16 years, about 16 years, same thing. And so those are my people. I get it. I understand. So I love showing up and leading an organization that shows up to support them and what they need, because they're telling us all the time. They might not say it, right? Teenage life, young adult. Listen, I need to, they may not sit down and have a coffee meeting, but things that they are saying and things that they are demonstrating, that's feedback, and making sure that we recognize it as that and helping people really interpret it that way. That is something we're gifted in. So that's my jam. It is. It really is.
Well, and I think it's so important to be brought to people's attention, because I think too often as adults, we expect certain reactions and we make these unspeakable agreements, I guess, with the teenagers that are in front of us. and we have this agreement that they don't know about, that they're going to act a certain way. And we forget that their prefrontal cortex is not completely functioning or developed. And so I see adults get so mad at these young teenagers, and you're like,
And I know we've talked about this. I have a lot of conversation and support parents a lot. I do like parent series, different districts and campuses hire me to do that. And that's one of my favorites. Besides talking to the young people, talking to the parents is my next favorite. But you and I, Alyssa, any educator listening in, right, regardless of your level capacity, we have thousands of examples of how we can look at a young person, even if they're taller than us, right? They're looking down on our scalp, they're looking in our eye. We know that no, they're nowhere near adulthood yet. We have a million examples on any given day. Hundreds of examples, right? To be more realistic on any given day. But if that's maybe your one teen, you have a couple in your house, then they're starting to look more like adults. So yes, we expect them to act a certain way. But also the reality is, and I've reflected on recently with my 7-year-old, we start those unwritten rules that you mentioned earlier. Just it depends on, right, just your background, your frame of reference, and literally who's raising you. Alyssa, growing up, if your mom said, "Hey, Alyssa, are you ready to go?" What does that really mean?
it means my shoes are on, my clothes are on, my hair is brushed, I have everything that I need, I'm ready to go.
Right. So, like, if you're even if in the context, if you're playing with some friends and your mom's like, "Hey, are you ready to go?" That means that it's time to go, right?
Oh yeah, it
Some,
depends on the way they say it. You ready to go?
but imagine asking my son that.
Yeah.
This alpha generation kid is like, "No, mom, I'm not," and he
Hmm.
skips back off to play, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, let me say what I mean and mean what
Yeah.
I say," right? Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that is huge. And I even with adults, I think clear is kind, and we have to lay out the expectation and what does this really mean, instead of just saying little phrases like you mentioned. Are you ready to go?
Right.
Yeah, we got to just say it what it means. So tell me, what does it mean to have a community in the classroom or on a campus or within a district? What does community look like?
Well, one of the things you mentioned, just like the clarity, it'll look different in different spaces. So I kind
Mhm.
of always, so it's kind of one of those questions sometimes where I'm like, well, we don't just have one brush, to paint it with. You really have to define it for your classroom, for your campus, for your area, your neighborhood, right? But within that, though, like just with any community, I think the cultural tone is important because the culture is going to drive the community, and you will want to be clear, like you said, you will want to specify, because otherwise, if we just kind of roll with it and happenstance happens, then we're not going to like what happens. So we want,
Absolutely.
so we want to be clear and defining. So going back to what we just mentioned a moment ago, like what we said. So the beliefs, people are really good, right? They're excellent at saying, this is what I want. But does your belief match your systems? Do you actually have those systems in place to support that actually back up what you say you want? Then with the systems, then day to day, those actions, is everything in alignment? Because if it's not, then the community, the culture at any level, right? Whatever cosm we're looking at, whatever size it is, like we said, the neighborhood, the actual district, campus, classroom, you're going to see it's going to show up. It's going to show up that something is not aligned well. It really
Man,
is.
you really hit the nail on the head, especially when you talk about, these beliefs, and you hear a lot of leaders give this jargon that's very popular, and they talk about all means all, and we are a welcoming culture. But then when you walk on the campus, you can see that there are individuals who feel uncomfortable,
Mhm.
that there are not systems in place that necessarily match what is being said as the
Mhm.
belief. And not to mean that literally might be the leader's belief, but
Mhm.
maybe they haven't done the work to understand the systems and structures that need to be in place. And so,
And
what would
inspect
you
that.
suggest? Like, what would you say to a leader who's in that situation?
that you do have to take that time to inspect and inspect from different perspectives. A lot of things I think could be could be made better, could be smoother, could be like going back to your word intentionality from the intro. We could have a lot more intentionality behind any given community, right, regardless of the size, if we're actually inspecting from different perspectives. Because what you see as a soup, as a principal, as an instructional coach, as a teacher, as a young person in the class, those are what, 5 different layers right
Yeah.
there. So then imagine if it's, other things, and it's like the school board perspective, and then there's a parent perspective. So just really having those, taking a step back to try to have as much of an objective view as possible. Sometimes surveys and things, sometimes, focus groups, those conversations, but going back to what you said, Alyssa, that is there space for it though? We want everyone to have a voice, but are we actually creating the space, but not making it a burden to have that be achieved as well? Because sometimes we want to do all the things. It sounds great, looks great on paper, but it's very cumbersome and it becomes a burden. And then that's when things don't get done with fidelity and don't have the impact.
So this is where I kind of want to pivot, because before we hopped on here, you and I were talking about the importance of the outside community. And, you had mentioned this. Sometimes it is a burden. We don't want our teachers to have to do one more thing, or our principals or our coaches. And so first of all, 2 questions. Why is it important to partner with the outside community? And 2, how can we make that a reality? What does that need to look like?
Well, my first thought on why is it important is because the community, the outside, is part of the school. It should be. And I know sometimes when I speak on this, I realize I might I wear glasses. Sometimes they might be a little bit rose colored. I'll admit it when it comes to some things about yesteryear, but in terms of like the village, the community, and more of a true connectedness. Because if there are certain things that the young people are exposed to, they know Mr. Jones down the street, and they help him often in his blank building, right? Maybe there's a lot of artisans in the community. So a lot of the kids, the young people may even be learning these skills and fostering this skill set that you know nothing about in the school lane, but we're not tapping into it because we aren't having these conversations of, would you be interested in coming in and having just a simple session with the young people? Would you be interested in having some kids possibly do an internship, an apprenticeship with you? Just different things, just exposing them to different pathways, career paths, but just based on their interest and also what is in the community, because that's who is going to fuel and feed the community, right? It's the community itself. Some of the ways you do that, we mentioned that. One thing I love about just like we're on and using technology now because of Zoom, and a lot of the young people know about Web3. It doesn't have to be someone necessarily in our physical community, but in terms of exposure and things and mentorship and connecting them, we can leverage technology to do that. We do have sessions with the parents, right? So while we're completing, again, some more of our cycle, our 360 wraparound of our scholars, classroom building district, then the parents are included in the conversations. And so a lot of the conversation we would want in development, we normally want to have with the educators and kind of hope that it trickles down to the young people. We're making sure the parents know the verbiage, the strategies, and again, a lot of the mindset shifts that need to happen if we're going to show up how we really should for these young people. Because again, we can look at the news, read stories, enough social media posts. The young people are showing us, right, things that are lacking, or things that they're craving, or they need. Are we recognizing it as that?
100%. And it breaks my heart. Sometimes I feel like there's so much emphasis on standardized assessment. And, I see every school district that I have worked with in the last 3 years has had some kind of intervention period built into the day.
And it's truly for House Bill 4545, or it's for, some kind of post-COVID enrichment activity. But I walk in there and those students are zombies on computers is what it is. And they're hating it. Teachers are trying to have like dumb suckers out. And they're like, if you finish, you get a
all
sucker.
the things,
Or
so
you get a
many things to try to motivate. And
gosh. And
so
how beautiful could it be if an outside artisan came in and mentored some students? Or if the students were able, I know it's a different time and I grew up on a farm, so school really did look a little different, but we would go and mend fence on someone's property if they couldn't. But I don't know, I just feel like if you're focusing on the whole child, standardized assessment can't be everything.
So that's such my conversation. And sometimes it's been difficult. I won't say difficult, it's been uncomfortable at times with administrators, I'll be honest. So if I'm talking and inquiring about their community outreach or, partnerships like we just discussed, then very proudly, a lot of administrators will discuss, how well literacy night is going or the literacy initiative and math and science night and things. And then I let them finish,
Mhm.
but then I reframe like, well, I was actually referring to things that didn't necessarily extend the school day or what's happening on campus, but things that support in home. Or my child is cutting up a bit. So what might be some reasons why? What are some strategies I can do to help get this together? Slash, these are just some good ways to make sure you're practicing perhaps literacy at home, math at home. And when we say at home, again, not making it such a big deal, making sure that it's very practical, that it's a
Yeah.
pragmatic approach, like where you're doing your usual things that you do. These are some really simple ways to incorporate some of the things while we're learning. But again, like you said, that whole child learning, that is truly, truly my passion because, when people talk about COVID delays and things like what the COVID gap is what people say.
Yeah.
But my SEL focus, right? I often say, okay, so if we understand that they're going to have some social emotional delays because they weren't being socialized for the year and a half, maybe two, depending on, what the district decisions were, then why is it considered a learning loss and gap on the other side? Are we talking about the same students? Are we not being equally as patient on one side than the other? That's always been kind of I can get a little ornery sometimes, Alyssa.
I'm glad. I'm
And
so glad you do.
I'm like, aren't we talking about the same kids? Explain how it's a loss on one side, but it's just a delay. Like, shouldn't we just kind of equalize the patience all around and understand that it's coming, but also create more opportunities for it to develop? And what about opportunities that have both embedded? Like you said, how if someone is maybe struggling in math and it's math enrichment, if the Mason is coming, how easily could he also incorporate perimeter area, right? Um, I mean, listen, I taught math. It's like it's a lot of a lot of things that really show up in the real world, especially in, farm life, crafts, everywhere, honestly, right? But just giving them that lens to see it everywhere and not just here's 6.3a on the paper again,
Yeah.
right? Just making it come to life. And it means more and it stays with young people better when we do that. You know that. You know
Yeah.
that. Mhm.
Well, and I sit there, you had mentioned learning loss, and, everyone during that time was like, it was the learning loss because we weren't socialized and we were so disconnected. And then I'm like, but then we send them in a classroom and stick them on a computer to be disconnected from the people sitting around them. And so, I get really frustrated with that. But I also, my biggest, I guess, my biggest thing that I want administrators to see is the importance of the community members outside. Like you said, Anika, if someone's acting up at home and I've never been an educator before, maybe I can speak to an educator who can give me practical solutions without having to, go overboard.
Right.
Or maybe I am noticing behaviors that are very alarming to me at home. And then my educators in the community can give me insight about cell phone use and how cell phone addiction is harming our kids. And I know that a lot of school districts provide some trainings for parents. But here's where my concern lies. Often those school districts are so large that what's needed for one community over here is it could be completely different for this community over here. And
Mhm.
so I think it really is up to the campus.
Mhm.
They need to serve that community. And I would even say if you don't have a child or you don't have a child in the community, an educated community is a prosperous community. So
Mhm.
you want to invest in education in those students in that building.
Definitely. I was like, that's one thing that, I mean, I think a lot of, unfortunately, especially in this SEL space, because it kind of has become almost like a buzzword and, oh, let's invest in this for a lot of districts and campuses. But a lot of the big companies or big box companies that have this one, um, generic and very general program, and even one, the fact that they want to pitch the same program for K-12, and that's not, there's very different social emotional needs. I mean, at least 3 to 4 breakups
Yeah.
if I had to choose. And when I do my work, with the different districts, just even advising them like, no, don't do one program that's all the same for K-12. We're working on different things at different ages, especially considering the delay with socialization from COVID. um, it's different, it's different
Yeah.
for a lot of different reasons, but being able to differentiate and customize, like that's something that you will want to be able to do. So even if there is some standardization, of a program, you still want to be able to have that leeway, that space to customize to really deliver what your community, your campus needs.
Yeah,
Definitely.
100%. So when you go onto campuses and speak to leaders, one, what are some of your greatest concerns with students in the classroom today, or even teachers? What are some concerns that you're noticing that we need to address and support? And then what are some strategies that you suggest to teachers that can help them with some of these concerns?
Uh, if I have concerns, I guess again, it would kind of go back to, we're talking about the same set of kids, group of kids, loss versus delay, right?
Yeah,
That's general, but speaks to what's happening on the day to day, which the reality is a lot of times the standards are given the priority versus the whole child, the emotional development being well, than being explored and emphasized at the same rate, quite frankly. Um, Strategy wise, I would really want to focus on the awareness, consistency, but yet variation. I know you're probably like, really, Anika? But, but so awareness, definitely being aware of, okay, going back to middle school,
uh-huh.
common thing, right? So people often would say, oh my gosh, you're a middle school educator. I could never, right? They want to be grown one day, a kid the next. And so literally this was me, Alyssa. Well, yes, I mean, if we know that, like, what's the problem? Like, I know this going into my classroom every day, right? So that awareness
Yeah.
of, you know what? I might get a little bit of a mixture, but that's okay. And let me try to understand where it's coming from. So just that face to face, that basic level of awareness of it is what it is, but also let me try to understand the motivation, the cause behind it, and that awareness. So it's because they do want more freedoms because they feel like they're growing up.
Yeah.
So let me help them bridge that. So, right, adult mind, like we said, being clear. You normally start to take more initiative and you need less reminders as part of growing up. So if your parent is still waking you up, but still reminding you to take out the trash, still reminding you to start your homework, then no, they're not going to see it when you say, well, I'm growing. No, we don't see
Mhm.
it. So, then you give some suggestions, right? So you can set reminders on your phone. You wake up at the same time every day. You know what time you normally get home. You get your snack. You might chill out for a minute. Then you go ahead and start your task. So just giving them some of those practical things, right? Again, where they see this is the whole me my teacher's concerned about, but this is also helping me in the classroom because I'm understanding more about the initiative. I'm understanding structure more and how that works. Oh, I understand the things that they're looking for, their expectations. The consistency, though, with the check ins, because sometimes, right, we might have that 30 minutes. They might be allotted for SEL time, and everyone kind of stops on campus. We all do SEL stuff. But and I guess I can't help it. But whether it's elementary and it might be like, you're rotating between 2 or 3 blocks of kids, or secondary and you have 8 A B day / you have 8 periods. If I only got to check in about my feelings one time, kind of during that 30 minutes for my whole day, but now I'm in Mrs. Crabtree's class and I'm feeling something happened. When do I let that out? When
Yeah.
does someone check in again? So that encouragement of the consistency in, okay, besides this 30-minute activity, there's something that you need to do I'm sorry, Alyssa. There's something that you need to do regularly for each block, each period, each class period. If it's the same class from morning to afternoon, something to kind of bring them back to let you know that you see, I always say, see, study, and support, that you see them, you're studying them, and you need to know, you're figuring out what you need to do to support them, right? Um, Something every day. So it can be, depending on the age level, it can be like the weather. How are you
Yeah.
feeling right now? Middle school, it can be different SpongeBob's. Um, just it,
Yeah.
it can, just different celebrity faces, just kind of with expressing different emotions. I'll say it could be squirrels, just thinking of all the different things out there.
Mm-hmm.
The Likert scale of 1 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, very basic things, but that's a quick check, so you'll know who you need to dig in with a little bit deeper, a little bit later in class, because you're doing your small groups. You might have your time where you're checking on them, walking around, you lean in a little closer, but that consistency. So I know I don't need to do anything outrageous to get Mrs. Jones' attention because she checks on us every day. Mrs.
Yep.
Crabtree checks on us every day. So there's no need for me to walk in and throw all the books across the desk because I'm upset because she was going to ask me anyway. And I know that. So
Yep.
I can sit tight for these 2 minutes. I can sit tight.
Mm-hmm.
But the variation, though, so, I gave some quick. Look, I guess my voice has been on holiday. I'm like, what in the world? Oh my goodness. so, so the variation part, we describe some different things you can do, because do not do the same thing over and over. That's boring. You're going to get tired of it. The kids are going to get tired of it. It's just going to become another thing to do. Oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
let's just get it over with. So, yes, the variation in the consistency. That's what I meant by that. So that's
Yeah. And so I do want to make sure, Anika, that I captured it all, because these three things are so important and so simple. Like, this isn't something that you have to go and reinvent the wheel. And so educators, and I want in any leader who's watching the replay, who's joining us, I want you to do this with your teachers too,
yes.
because starting off with awareness, when you know, Anika and I both, we taught middle schoolers, so we knew it was going to be a giant mood swing
Right.
all day. But having that awareness and understanding what you're going to face today, and then being consistent, because students thrive on structure. Humans,
I
it's
was
safe.
going to say everybody, look, even the awareness, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, some educators went back today, some people go back tomorrow, and some educators go back next week. So,
Mhm.
educator leaders, principals, and beyond, be mindful.
Yeah,
But when you
people are going to
say,
be
hey,
ready
aren't you
when
happy
you
to
do
be
it.
back? It's still relatively early in January. I'll say it that way. So, you might have to really understand, and be aware that, yeah,
But it's okay. And I think that's where so many people get in their feels and they take it personally.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man, like
It's not a personal thing at
it's
all.
hard to come back from a 2-week break if for anyone. And so just know they're gonna be like, oh, yeah, we're here. But that's just for the moment. But being consistent, I think, is so important because it shows authenticity.
Mhm.
And it's not just, hey, Anika, how are you doing today? And I ask you once in the entire year and it feels fake versus I see you every day. I greet you every day. How are you doing? How's your family? What happened this, like, having those conversations and checking in on the people that you lead, whether that is students or adults, I think is important.
And what you said, the authenticity behind it, because like I said, I don't know, like maybe I need a couple more days. No, I have time. I'm just kidding. But I was like, because I'm feeling a little bit honorary. But when someone asks how you're doing, but you've seen this if you haven't experienced this in the hallway, but they don't break their stride, then you really aren't concerned about how I was doing. So I'm like, well, save your breath. Why even ask? Just wave and keep walking.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
don't ask that question. And so that's this whole own thing of, like you said, being authentic in the consistency. Because if I if I inhale to answer, and by the time I do, you're like 5 steps away. Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. And
Mhm.
I think that's why it's so, I am a huge, I don't know where you stand on this. I feel like it's one of the biggest debates. I believe in the power of every teacher standing at their door during passing period because of just what you said. It's not a pass. How you doing? Oh, I'm going to keep on going. I'm standing here firm. I'm looking you in the eye, or whatever the student, because some students don't want you to look them in the eye. Like I get that too. But
Mhm.
you're standing there and you're
But you
making
can assess real
space for
quick.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, you can assess really quickly. So even before you do the checkup, it's an informal, unofficial checkup, right? Like I can tell by the way that Alyssa walked in, she might be a 2 on our 1 to 5 today.
Mhm.
Something's off,
Yeah.
right? But also, we both said middle school life. Like, listen, be be at that door in that hallway, because it can get a little spicy during passing periods sometimes, especially coming back from breaks. We don't know what they were talking about on social media,
Yeah.
right? And different things. So we want to make sure that we are present for sure.
100%.
Mhm.
And I think administrators, you need to do the same thing with your teachers. Greet each of them,
Check in. Yes.
but stand firm, like
Mhm.
stand there, don't keep on moving. And then I love what you added, Anika, at the end is add that variation. And I think that's part of the authenticity of it to where it doesn't feel fake.
I mean, because it, like, I don't know how else to say it. Like it will get boring. It will get very stale. Like I don't care if it's the same kids all day. I don't care if it's you switching. You're just saying it twice. My goodness, if you have to do the same check-in 8 times a day, please put some variation in it. Like not just for their sake, but for your sake. Because think about what your delivery may be like by number 8, number 7.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It and it doesn't even have to be something completely different. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just a little variation goes a long way.
And even asking the young people, especially when they get to like that upper elementary, we're very opinionated. This alpha generation, Gen Z, upper elementary, so third grade and up, ask them for some input sometimes. What's another way y'all think? Who has some ideas for how we can check in? Even create a little box. So we talk about building community. The more we can have them create with you, right? While you're collaborating, whether it's little people, not so little people,
Yeah.
people in the community, all that, the more powerful any experience will be because of their ownership in it, right? They helped create it, they're going to do it. I
Yeah.
used to have a catering business on the side, Alyssa. So you know how people
Ooh.
say when you're having a hard time with like a young person eating something, they say, well, have them cook with you, because when they're right there with you, cooking and dicing and all of that. So in essence, that's what you're doing when you're having someone collaborate and build with you. You're building a social contract,
Yeah.
whether formally or informally. And so they're going to hold each other accountable a different kind of way, because we were all there. This is what we all said we were going to do, right? Then also, well, if something isn't maybe feasible. We talked about the perspectives, right? If someone from a certain perspective, it's like, well, you know how that would impact me though. Y'all didn't think about it, but let me speak up now. Then you can catch it before it's even in place. So you're taking care of some of the grievances and gripes and shenanigans on the front end. Yeah.
Well, and it's a great way for people to be seen and heard. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, our students, adult humans,
Mhm.
might not feel seen or heard, and we invest in what we create. And so, if we have a part in that creation, like you said, and we feel seen and heard, we're more likely to follow through with it or believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I even, Anika, and this is something, just one last point, and I kind of want to pick your brain about this. Going back to the outside community being part of the school community,
Mhm.
what would be your recommendation for a leader who wants to bring in outside stakeholders, outside community members, whether they're business owners in the community or parents and guardians, to bring them in to help create a campus goal? How would you encourage an administrator to bring that together so that the people on the outside will also help with the kids, help with the students? So it's not just the school's responsibility.
I first think about as many opportunities as possible, like before even getting to that point, if you know, as much as possible, where the school is just more present in some of the community events and community things, because somewhere along the way there became this disconnect of community and school, and it's not at all a partnership. I'm not sure what happened. I wasn't really there for it. I missed that memo. I, I don't know exactly what happened, but I believe that they should be integrated. So in terms of, like yes, there's community back to school things, making sure that the school district, right, is there. If it's the local school that's there for that
Mhm.
event, where it's not so much necessarily competing, like how can the school even increase presence at like the rec center, at some of the games, just think, I know there's neighborhood games, especially until the kids are old enough for UIL here in Texas, all of that. But just thinking about more of those, just the school showing up as a community partner. What about doing
Yeah.
some things at we have HEB at the grocery store, at HEB here, and just different things, just really being strategic and brainstorming how to show the school off as a community partner. Because I guess I'm kind of thinking about it this way. If there was nothing that I can kind of look back on and say, oh, well, we've developed this relationship, we have this partnership, and now they're asking me to come do something, I don't know how seriously I might take that. I don't know how enthused I would be to show up and do that. I might be excited because it's been a while, right? And we need to have these conversations, community partners to the school, but even just helping them, even as part of the conversation when they do show up, helping them understand how they play a role, like why it's important for the community, why we want them to be there. It's like, I asked you to come from the library because, maybe we're speaking on, yes, literacy, but we're just thinking about how literacy rates impact, like we say, prosperity and economic
Mhm.
development. So then I asked you to come from the construction, management team that the corporation is down the street, because we have some young people that are interested in. So
Yeah.
you're also speaking to the economic development and building your pipeline. Like you can build your pipeline from the school. Like there will be no reason for any shortages, any same thing actually for education. I do talk to a lot of districts about that. Like, y'all, some young people want to be educators. So imagine if you discover that early, you start a
Yeah.
little club, your club has a mentor, sponsor, and it's just following them. The older they get and they're learning age appropriate things, by the time they get to college and it's time for student teaching, all of this, how far ahead of the game and on point would they be? There's like a 16-year-old third grade teacher I can't remember what state she's in, but she's 16 years old and she teaches third grade.
Good for her.
So, but just imagine like the pipeline. Like
Yeah.
you can make sure you fulfill your own pipeline, whatever your needs are, and
Yes.
making sure that the community partners really understand that it's not, like an agenda item, but it's really meaningful and explaining the meaning and purpose behind it. But first,
Love that.
showing up as a partner for real because, you called me when you needed something.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Anika, that's beautiful. And I just want to say it, like, we have to move past the literacy night and the math and those are great things. I'm not saying that. They're great things, but that cannot be the only community outreach that we do. We need to have partners with our community. So I love that. Now, before we go, Anika, what are some things that you're reading, you're listening to, maybe 2 or 3 resources that you highly recommend for other leaders out there?
I'm laughing because I'm terrible about finishing. I'm not going to say finishing, but it takes me a long time to finish a traditional book.
Uh-huh.
So, a book that I am still reading and working on is The Social Emotional Lives of Gifted Children.
The
Uh,
social emotional lives of what?
of Gifted Children.
Oh, gifted children.
It's because it's rather unique. It's really interesting because it's not, it's there's a lot of nuances that once it's articulated, you read it, you're like, I have seen that before. That makes
Uh-huh.
sense. Podcasts, though, Educators Moving On podcast.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Also, um, if you're an instructional coach, especially, or even an administrator, the Simply Instructional
Simply
Coaching.
coaching.
Yes. I think
Uh-huh.
she changed the name a little bit, but yes, that one. And then another book is Get Together. So we're talking about community, and Get Together is more so, it's really written for people that if they're going to literally build a community. So whether it's like they're going to start an organization or a club, or maybe even digitally, but a lot of the premise and things to consider and remember, like I can definitely see, my educated brain was working. Like I can definitely see the parallels for what to make sure to implement, good approaches, good strategies. And it really didn't matter age, it didn't really matter what the community was based on or about.
Uh-huh.
But I would say, especially for going back to building that community partnerships, that would be a great book for leaders, for
Okay.
the educational leaders to get
I'm gonna
together.
have to check that out.
Mhm.
And then I need to also get the social emotional lives of gifted children. I'm interested in that. Now,
Yes.
Anika, I know you have a freebie for the audience members tonight. And can you tell us about some upcoming things that you've been working on?
Yes, yes. So yes, you definitely want to download our freebie. Our freebie is, so look, we've called it a couple different things over the years, but this is the premise. 5 reasons why your organizational culture sucks, or 5 reasons or 5 things to avoid when it comes time to build culture, basically. So when you sign up for that and you download it, you will also, with something new, right? They were kind of, I'm not going to say we're shifting, but it's something we're excited about. And it's just, again, making that connection. So between some of your favorite movies and what we've learned about emotional intelligence from them. So if you're thinking Mean Girls, New Jack City, Gladiator, Hidden Figures, 300, right? The Back to the Future trilogy, a lot of these movies, like we might have just watched them as entertainment, but they were dropping some jewels and some gems though, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you pick them up? So we're just making it very plain throughout this year. And so that is something that you will receive via different newsletters this month, as long as you're on the email list. And in about a week and a half, on January 15th, on Dr. MLK Day, we are releasing our manga book series for social emotional learning, and definitely emphasizing Black and Brown children in the manga series. So lots of the things that we talked about awareness. And so we're talking about really a lot of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills being developed and emphasized throughout these different episodes of the manga series. So very excited about that. Alyssa, I have a former student, you feel like you kind of you feel yourself a little differently as an educator when you have some of your older students that reach back out and you work with.
Mhm.
So the very first year I taught, that student is I want to make sure I say it right, my mangaka. So she's the illustrator for my manga book because that's what she does professionally. So it's such a
Anika.
big deal. I know. I know.
Oh my gosh, that right there is a love, like that's just a love project to collaborate with a former student. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. So I have to ask, where can we get these things?
So the link tree, I was like, I know we'll be attaching the link tree, dropping it in the comments and
Yeah.
attaching it to the notes. But I am also, so that's where it is. That's where everything is. Anything you need
Awesome.
for us, that's where you'll find it. So again, for the manga series, that'll be live on the link tree on the 15th.
Excellent.
And you might see a lot of energy. I know we talked about energy earlier, right? We might see a lot of energy around it because a number of my former students, they're going to be ambassadors for the series for me. So super cool. They're like, look, Miss Jones, we're ready to go. We're ready. I'm like, okay. So we're
Yeah.
rolling. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing, Anika. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And audience, if you're catching the replay, if you're watching us live now, I want you to go to that Linktree link. It's in the comments right now. I'm going to put it in the show notes. You can also see it here. It's Linktree back. Well, I can't say that. Backslash holistic.fluency. Get your hands on this today. Sign up. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for the manga series. I'm so stinking stoked. So thank you, Anika, so much.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully I'll have you back on the show soon.
I would love to. Thank you.
So good night, everyone.